All right, let's talk about something that I think is on a lot of our minds. How do you build something stable in a world that feels like it's changing every single second? Today, we're going to dive into one of the biggest anxieties in tech, vendor lock-in, and figure out how we can build a solid cloud strategy that doesn't get totally derailed by every shiny new announcement. Let's get into it. So let me just ask you this, right off the bat, what's really driving your cloud strategy? Is it the genuine excitement for innovation? Or is it just this constant nagging anxiety? The fear of falling behind, or worse, making the absolute wrong choice? It's a really important question because the answer to that shapes literally every single decision you and your team are going to make. And a huge part of that anxiety comes from this feeling right here, the sheer volume of new stuff. It's not a gentle stream of updates, is it? No, it feels like a high-pressure fire hose aimed directly at your face. And just trying to keep up feels, well, completely impossible sometimes. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You open your inbox and bam, there it is, another game changer. Announcing Quantum Stream AI. It's a new paradigm in data processing. But before you've even had a chance to skim the white paper on that one, another email pops up. Now in preview, Hyperfabric DB. And of course, it promises to solve every scaling problem you've ever had, forever. And just as you're trying to figure out what Hyperfabric even means, another alert hits. ChronoCache Global is now generally available. You gotta move. Go, go, go. It is absolutely relentless. And look, this isn't me being dramatic. We are talking about literally thousands of new features, updates, and brand new services announced by the major cloud providers every single year. There's no way any one person or even a whole team can realistically keep track of all of it. So, what happens when you're drowning in all this information? Well, you usually get two things. First, you get decision paralysis. You're so overwhelmed with options that you just can't make a choice at all. And second, you get hit with what I call roadmap FOMO. That's the fear of missing out. You're constantly terrified that the service you just committed to is going to be obsolete tomorrow. It's a perfect recipe for just standing still. And all this anxiety, this fear, it often boils down to one big, scary phrase: vendor lock-in. We have been trained to see it as the ultimate enemy in tech. But what if I told you that fear itself might actually be holding us back from making the best possible decisions for our business? Okay, first, let's just make sure we're all on the same page. When we say vendor lock-in, what are we really talking about? Well, it's pretty simple. It's just when the cost, whether that's time, money, or the sheer effort of retraining your whole team, of moving from one provider to another is so high that it's just not practical. You're essentially committed to that platform. And this is where we really need to look at both sides of the coin. The fear, it's totally valid. High switching costs, losing some negotiating power, those are real risks. But the benefit side is just as real, and we often forget about it. When you commit to a platform, you can unlock way deeper integrations, you can make your team way more productive, and you can get access to unique innovations you simply can't get anywhere else. This really gets to the heart of the mindset shift we need. Think about it. Every important tech decision you make, whether it's a database, a framework, or even a programming language, it involves some level of commitment, some degree of lock-in. The goal isn't to live in this fantasy world where there's zero lock-in. The goal is to make those commitments strategically and to manage them intelligently. So how do we actually do that? How do we manage it intelligently? Well, we need to move away from making decisions based on fear and start using a framework. We need a simple, repeatable process that puts our business needs first and helps us make clear, confident decisions even when everything feels so complex. And here it is, super simple, a 3-step framework. Step 1, and this is by far the most critical, is to define the business need, not the tech you want to use, but the actual problem you're trying to solve. Step 2 is to evaluate the trade-offs. For this specific problem, is portability more important than raw performance? Is it more important than team productivity? And finally, step 3, plan for the future. Don't panic about it, but have a realistic, documented idea of what an exit strategy might look like, just in case. Using a simple framework like this completely changes how you make decisions. You move away from those hype-driven, reactive choices where you're always just chasing the newest thing in the block. Instead, you start making strategic, business-driven decisions that are laser-focused on solving a core problem and getting a real outcome. All right, that's enough theory. Let's make this really concrete. We're going to apply this framework to one of the most common and most high-stakes decisions an architect has to make: choosing a managed database service. So picture this. A brand new critical project is starting up, and it needs a database. That fire hose of options is blasting you with choices. What do? Which one do you possibly pick? Well, instead of panicking, you just pull out the framework. You start evaluating the trade-offs. You look at that proprietary native cloud database. The performance is probably going to be the absolute best because of that deep integration. But, and it's a big but, the portability is low. The cost to switch is going to be high. Then you look at the managed open source option. Performance is still very, very good. And your portability is high. It's much easier to migrate down the road. Of course, the operational overhead for both is low. That's why you're looking at a managed service to begin with. And this brings us to the most important point. There is no single right answer here. It doesn't exist. If your business need is to have absolutely bleeding-edge performance because that's your core competitive advantage, then maybe that proprietary database is the smart strategic choice. But if your business need is flexibility and keeping your options open long-term, then the open source option is probably better. The choice is driven by the business, not just by the tech specs. Okay, let's wrap all this up into a simple playbook. Think of these as the key takeaways, the new principles you can use to build a more stable, confident, and effective cloud strategy, starting today. Here it is. Number 1, always, always, always start with a business problem, not the cool tech solution. 2, stop thinking of lock-in as this evil monster and start treating it as a spectrum of trade-offs that you can manage. 3, evaluate new services based on the real value they bring to solving your problem, not on the hype around them. 4, always have a pragmatic, documented exit strategy, not because you're paranoid, but because that's just good planning. And finally, number 5, prioritize the stability of your systems and the productivity of your team over the thrill of chasing every single shiny new announcement. And I'll leave you with this one last thought to chew on. We spend so much energy being afraid of the term lock-in, but what if we just reframed it? What if, when it's chosen wisely and managed intelligently, strategic lock-in isn't a trap at all, but is just another word for commitment, a commitment to using the absolute best tools to help you and your business win?